So since you arrived, you got there in 2020, so that's during COVID. Since then, what kind of growth have you seen in the parish?
I would say in 2021, 2022, 2023, we were averaging probably around 30 to 40 adult converts per year. And then in 2024 and 2025 and this year, it just is going way up. I bet we're bringing in so far this year 60 adult converts, and I probably have another 60 to 100 inquirers right now.
That's amazing. So you really are experiencing what we're observing as like this, what we've been calling the second surge. It sounds like
Yes,
you're getting hit
definitely.
with it. That's amazing.
Definitely.
Hey everyone, this is Matthew Namee. Christ is risen. I'm here today with Father Theodore Dorrance, who is Father Theodore. You're the priest of St. Catherine's in what city in Colorado?
Greenwood Village, a southeast suburb of Denver, Colorado.
So Father Theodore has been involved in the missions world, Orthodox missions in America for a long time. You're a priest of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese, but we're going to talk today about your parish in particular, what you're experiencing right now in terms of the convert growth and everything else. But then we can maybe a little bit more broadly what you're seeing, because I know you have your finger on the pulse, especially in the Greek Archdiocese, about what's going on in terms of new people coming in, missions, etc. So let's start with you. Dorrance doesn't sound Greek.
No, it's actually a French derivation.
Yes. So tell me, are you half
But
Greek or are you a
my my nickname in seminary was Tupperware because I'm really like a tossed salad. So I tell people that I converted and that I'm still converting to Orthodoxy. I feel like I know now that I don't know anything.
There you go. So you grew up in what did you grow up in? What was your religious background growing up?
I was born into a generationally Roman Catholic family, and I continued that all through high school and then a little bit into my college. And then because I really didn't wholeheartedly believe in the papacy and some of the doctrines that developed out of that, I left the Roman Catholic Church and went into sort of the non-denominational evangelical Protestant movement and stayed there through my freshman and sophomore year. And it was the differences between those two worlds, the Roman Catholic world and the evangelical Protestant world, that motivated me to study church history. And then I discovered the Orthodox Church through an article, and I can't even tell you the author of the article. But the claim of the article was the Orthodox Church had an unbroken continuity from the present day all the way back to the apostles. And I literally said to myself, this is either the most presumptuous statement in the universe, or if it's true, it can be verified. And so I set off on a journey my entire junior year of college to either prove it or disprove it. And so at the end of the junior year of college, I was convinced that that article was true. And so I started to really focus in on becoming Orthodox.
So you became Orthodox was during college, right after college?
No, I became Orthodox the December of my senior year, so halfway through my senior year of college.
Okay. And at what point did you go straight into seminary after that? Did you?
No. I actually married my high school sweetheart, entered the corporate world for a couple of years, and kind of looked at the people that were ahead of me in that corporate environment 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, and really asked myself, can I see myself doing this for the rest of my life? I was doing well, but I wasn't getting any fulfillment. And so I walked home after work, and I turned to my wife and I said, what do you think if we went to seminary? She said, okay. And I didn't go to seminary initially to become a priest because I really couldn't say by that time, it's just a short time after my conversion that I really even knew what the priesthood was about. But I did go because I felt like this was a good time in my life to take a pause and understand more deeply my Orthodox Christian faith and about the church and how God might be able to use my gifts and my personality, whether it be in the priesthood or in any other facet. And so the priest who sent me said, look, evaluate at the end of the first year and really try to evaluate remembering why you went there, what the reason for your going was, and see what the Lord is saying to you. And so by the end of that first year, Matthew, I really felt like God was calling me to the priesthood. And I talked to my wife and I talked to a few other people who really knew me, and they confirmed that. So we just kept going forward.
Wow. So you had been Orthodox. By the time you were ordained, how long had you been Orthodox?
Let's see, 6.5 years.
Okay. So did you
convert? Not long enough, really.
Not
in
long
retrospect.
enough, but you were a baby.
I was a baby.
So you converted. Now, did you convert in the Greek Archdiocese, in a parish in the Greek Archdiocese?
I did. I actually became Orthodox at the parish that I'm now the priest of.
That's amazing. As I know you didn't immediately go back there. So you went to seminary, and then what happened?
Well, when I finished seminary in 1990, believe it or not, the then Diocese of Denver was in between bishops, which is not normal.
And there wasn't even a local. If I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was a weird time, and so I got recruited out, if you could say that, to the West Coast, and became part of the metropolis of San Francisco. And so I started as an assistant priest in Oakland, California for 2 years, and then went on my own for 4 years to another St. Catherine, Redondo Beach, California. And then after that 4 years, I was sent to start a parish as a vision of the metropolis, not a breakaway parish because of a split, in Beaverton, Oregon. And I stayed there for 20 years.
Now I've been to that parish many times. That is a unique parish. You started it. It was a lot of people. You think of a mission parish. It's either you have like a split, some acrimonious something going on, or often it's a mother parish sort of birthing a daughter parish, right? But in this case, it was a little different, right? It was the metropolis itself, the sort of the diocese, basically, that was sort of going out and starting a mission. Is that right?
Yeah, it was kind of a unique situation because the priest at the long-standing 100-year-old parish there in Portland had come out of Salt Lake City, where they have 2 communities under one parish council. And he was a big proponent of that kind of model, but the bishop of the metropolis was not a proponent of that. And so it kind of delayed ever starting a second parish in the Portland metropolitan area until, unfortunately, this priest passed away from a long-standing illness. So it was truly a vision and a strategy of the metropolis to start a second parish in the Portland metropolitan area. So consequently, they sent me, who was part of the missions and evangelism ministry of that metropolis, without any members at all.
So you just had some seed funding.
Go there. There was no outside funding either, Matthew.
Oh my gosh.
I know. It was a crazy thing. Had I been my age now, I probably wouldn't have been able to do that. But back then, it seemed like a very exciting adventure.
And now that parish is grown rapidly, and it's got a school under your watch, right? You had a school. You had
full-time school.
All kinds of stuff going on there. It's actually a remarkable parish. There's so many it's very convert friendly. It's very ethnically diverse.
It is.
So
it is.
Yeah.
I say to people, look, in the Old Testament, if God could speak through a donkey, then he could use a guy like me to start a parish from scratch.
There you go. So that parish, you were there for 20 years, and then what happened?
Well, then a bunch of things were happening in the country. While I was there at St. John in Beaverton, we had hosted a national missions and evangelism retreat at our parish. And because of that and other things that were happening of the Holy Spirit, there was the opportunity to actually start a ministry of parish health and church growth in the metropolis of Denver under Metropolitan Isaiah. And so they ended up choosing me to do that. And at the same time, my parents and my wife's parents were aging. And it just seemed like it was of the Holy Spirit to kind of return home, because I'm a native of Colorado. My wife is basically a native of Colorado. So it just seemed like all things were pointing that direction.
So you ended up back at the parish where you converted to Orthodoxy.
I did. I ended up starting a doctorate in church leadership and taking on that ministry. And that was going really, really well under Metropolitan Isaiah until COVID hit. And then COVID shut the whole country down. And so that kind of shut down, and the retirement of Metropolitan Isaiah and a new Metropolitan, young and energetic Constantine coming in, a lot of things happened simultaneously, again, of God. The then chancellor became the U.S. director of IOCC. The current, or the then head priest at St. Catherine was asked to go be the chancellor. And I was asked to, in that transition, go and be the head priest of St. Catherine, because His Eminence Metropolitan Constantine was going to kind of take on that role of doing the visitations of parishes and consulting them and helping them to be as healthy as they can.
Yeah, so you've been at St. Catherine's for how many years now?
I took on St. Catherine at the end of 2020, so we're going on 6 years here.
And how old is the parish? Is it like a relatively newer GOA parish?
Yeah, it just celebrated, I think, 2 years ago, their 40th anniversary of existence.
So when you got there as a convert, it wasn't that old.
It was brand new. It started in 1984, and I became Orthodox at St. Catherine in 1984.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you were one of the first to become Orthodox. How big was the parish when it started versus where it was when you arrived in 2020, let's say?
I would say that they started as a break off from the cathedral with about 50 solid families, and now it's about 450 families.
Amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. So I'm only really the third full-time priest that's ever really served this parish. So they've had a lot of continuity and consistency.
Do you have other priests that help you, whether full-time, part-time, attached?
For most of my time at St. Catherine, there's been 2 full-time priests. Right now, we're in between not having an assistant priest, which we should have again in the summer. But that's because right now, across the entire Orthodox United States, we're experiencing a crisis of clergy. So we had to bite the bullet here in the short run, because we want to make sure that as many of our churches as possible can be full-time Eucharistic communities.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's you for 450 families, not individuals, but families.
And I have 2 deacons, but the deacons are limited in. I mean, it's great to have them liturgically, and they do go and visit some shut-ins, but yeah, it's limited.
So since you arrived, you got there in 2020, so this is during COVID. Since then, what kind of growth have you seen in the parish?
I would say minimum we've had, I would say in 2021, 2022, 2023, we were averaging probably around 30 to 40 adult converts per year. And then in 2024 and 2025 and this year, it just is going way up. I bet we're bringing in so far this year 60 adult converts, and I probably have another 60 to 100 inquirers right now.
That's amazing. So you really are experiencing what we're observing as like this, what we've been calling the second surge. It sounds like you're getting hit with it. That's amazing.
Definitely.
Are you noticing, thinking about like the original sort of surge of people that came in the first part of the 2020s, the kind of COVID era, compared to what we're seeing the last couple years? What are the demographics that you're seeing? I mean, we always hear about young men. Obviously, that's the kind of the strong narrative is lots of young people. But I know that a lot of parishes are now saying, well, actually, we're getting a lot of young families. We're even getting some young women, more racially and ethnically diverse. It's not just kind of young white people. What are you seeing in kind of broader Denver area?
I would say that St. Catherine, like St. John and Beaverton, is very, very demographically diverse. We're diverse in ages, we're diverse in ethnicities, we're diverse in terms of single, married, young, middle-aged, single, families with young children. So we're seeing that reflected in the people that actually convert to St. Catherine. So it's not just the young white men, it's all ages, all genders, and all of the demographics are represented.
Are you getting, what is driving people that you're seeing? What are people telling you?
I mean, I think there's a lot of factors. I've read articles that are trying to really simplify some of the motivations for people coming to Orthodoxy. But to me, I think the overarching motivation is two things, really. I would say that people want a deeply rooted, unchanging truth. That's probably the number one overarching thing that I see as a common denominator when I ask the question of what brought you here. And I think the other thing is that some of the division in our society is, showing an ugly face, kind of putting a face on evil. And people that maybe weren't ever even brought up in a church or with any kind of faith tradition, when they see sort of this face of evil in our society, they say, if there's evil, there must be good and there must be a God, and I want to be on the right side. So I do see, obviously when I was in Beaverton and we started with nobody, we were in one of the most unchurched cities in one of the most unchurched states in the country. And so we had to survive by making catechumens, making disciples. And I just remember the first 10 years, people might grace our church with no knowledge of Orthodoxy. In the last 10 years, because of the internet and because of podcasts and social media, it was a huge difference. People would never come into the church without having lots of background and exposure of various kinds on Orthodoxy. And that's what I see today. People come in with a lot of knowledge about Orthodoxy.
So how do you look at catechesis and preparation for people? And has that changed? Has your approach changed from 10 years ago to today, or even 5 years ago from today? Have you had to change and adjust based on the differences of the kind of people you're seeing?
I think content and having an imperative of as thorough preparation and formation, I don't think that's changed. I think what has changed is needing to develop a team ministry as opposed to a priest being able to do a lot of it himself. So I'm really, by necessity, creating a whole entire ministry. I have two teams that I'm training during the year. One is a team of people who adopt inquirers, 7 to 10 inquirers per person, and kind of coach them through the whole entire process, including trying to match them up when the time comes with good sponsors. And then the other team is a team of catechists who can assist me in actually teaching the classes and sharing that, but also engaging them in their own talents and using their time and talents in a way that's really helping them to be offering them in a way that helps the parish, helps these inquirers, and also helps them grow.
How many people, you have these two teams, the catechists and then the kind of people mentoring inquirers, how many people are you talking about from the established Orthodox faithful?
Well, on the first team, which are the ones who are coaching inquirers through the process, it depends on how many inquirers I have in the parish at one time, because I don't want them to take on more than ideally 7 per person. So if I have 100, you just take 100 divided by 7, and that's how many people I have on that team. And then I have 4 or 5 people who help me in terms of teaching the classes, because we have, 15 or more classes that we offer. We start in the fall, and we end sometime during Great Lent before Holy Week begins.
So you've got a big enough base in the parish community that you can draw, you have enough talent and sort of experienced people that you can populate these teams, it sounds like, which is...
Oh, yeah, with 450 families. And I would say that over the 40 years of St. Catherine's lifetime, the overwhelming majority of the members have become Orthodox at some point in their adult life.
So these are mostly, they're not cradle born.
Not cradle.
Interesting. I think a lot of people have, and I've talked to a lot of other people across the Greek Archdiocese, and the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America is actually more diverse and complex than some people realize. And there's this image that some people have of the Greek parish that's very ethnically Greek, but there are those parishes like your current one, your one in Beaverton, and in other places around the country that don't look what people associate with a kind of ethnic, very cradle-oriented parish.
I think what you're saying is true, Matthew, but I do think that this difference within the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese is relatively new. So that perception of them being more ethnocentric parishes is not completely unfounded, but I would say that the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese is rapidly changing, and that there are parish plants happening in all of the metropolises and all over the country. I think that there is a growing understanding that just growing an existing parish larger is not going to make that parish healthier, and it's not an effective way to grow the Orthodox faith. You really can't, and sometimes you almost have to tear down your old barn and build a new barn to make that happen, because we quickly outgrow our campuses. Right now, just in the Denver metropolitan area, you have the 100-year-old cathedral and you have the 40-year-old St. Catherine. Mm-hmm. And both of those campuses are, for all intents and purposes, maxed out. Greek Orthodoxy cannot grow in Denver unless we start planting new parishes.
So we need more priests, is what you're saying.
We need more priests. But you and I have had a conversation about that, but I still say if we are doing the right thing in trying to make our parishes healthier, and we, the parishes, being the pipeline for our seminaries, I think we're just experiencing a current crisis, but we're going to catch up, even though there's going to be some lag time.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So I want to talk about that for a second. So you mentioned before that you normally would have a full-time assistant, but right now you don't. And that's for 450 families. Just so I'm clear, what's a typical attendance on a given Sunday? Typical Sunday, not a special feast day or anything. What would you normally see right now?
We're seeing over 400.
Wow. So you're for that many people,
It's kind of a funny thing, Matthew. We don't have adequate parking.
yeah.
So we actually put cones out in the street in front of us and closed down a lane with the permission of the city.
That is. I'm gonna share that idea. That's a creative
And so
solution.
people fill up the parking lot first, and then they start parking out on the street. So the interesting thing that everybody who has lots and lots of inquirers and new converts knows is that these people come to Orthros. They come to Matins. So our church is filling up. Our parking lot's filling up earlier and earlier and earlier. And so even our long-term faithful and all of the cradle Orthodox are actually having to come before Matins is even over with in order for them to not have to hike
to come to Matins
a
just to
couple
get
miles
parking.
to come to church.
That's great.
So it's been this amazing phenomenon that by the time the doxology started, our church is already full.
That's wonderful. That's awesome.
It's great.
So what is, in your mind, normally you said you'd have 2 priests. Right now you've got 1. What is the optimal number for a parish of your size? Like if you had an abundance of priests, we had more priests than we know what to do with, what would be the right number?
I've always said, and again, this is not the most ideal, but I'm saying being practical within, let's say, the milieu of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese. We would want to have 1 priest for every 200 families. But having started a parish from scratch and knowing when you're really, really healthy and you're Eucharistically centered, I would even drop that down to 1 priest for 100 families, depending on their degree of involvement. Because one of the things that you find is that the healthier your parish gets, the more access they need and want and even demand for their priest.
Yeah. Well, and with new converts, what I typically hear from priests is that they need a little bit more help and guidance from the priest than someone who's established. So is that what you're seeing as well? The more new converts you have, the more demand there is for your time?
For sure, because they're hungry on the one hand, and on the other hand, they want to see expressed in reality what they've been reading about. Mm-hmm. The other thing I'd say, though, Matthew, is that what people don't talk a lot about, and I know that they're probably experiencing it, but I think it's important for us to name, is that if the Holy Spirit is working in society at large, and He is, He's also working in the already existing Orthodox homes. So I'm not just seeing a resurgence in society of people who want God and are looking for a more unchanging fullness of truth expression of God. I'm also seeing that happening in my already existing Orthodox members. And so I probably heard more confessions this Lent than I've ever heard in my 34 years of priesthood.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So the Orthodox people, the existing Orthodox people, are getting more engaged. They're committing more deeply.
Yes. Yeah. It's the same Holy Spirit working in our society everywhere.
Absolutely. So you have, in an ideal world, it sounds like you need 4 or even maybe 5 priests for a parish of your size.
In an ideal world, yeah. Because keep in mind, like you said, people who are inquiring, they just sort of by the nature of their journey and their seeking, they need to have questions answered. They need to be coached. They need to be formed. And I kept telling people in my parish, I go, with this many inquirers, this by itself is a full-time job for a couple people.
Yeah. So do you see the people in your parish? You mentioned that you've got these teams of people. Is the rest of the community stepping up as well? And you're finding godparents for all of these people. How is that all playing out? How is everything integrating?
I'll tell you a funny, quick story that I think will answer the question.
Yeah.
I had somebody come to me, and initially, people who were not Orthodox, who couldn't receive communion, were coming up, and they were asking at the time for a blessing. And we had, we probably had 50, 60 70, 100 inquirers on any given Sunday. And so they're coming up and they're asking the priest for a blessing. So this parishioner comes to me and says, I am getting so frustrated by all these new people. I don't even feel like I have access to my own priest. And then they waited for like a pregnant pause, and then they said, and then last week I got asked to be one of their sponsors, and it changed my whole perspective. And she started laughing.
That's great. That's great.
So I do think that answers the question, because I do think that there is the need for any of our communities to adjust to the growth, to the change, to people who are testing the waters of orthodoxy for the first time. They may come with a drink in their hand. They may come wearing some kind of funky clothing or wearing a baseball cap. They don't know. And so the people need to make that adjustment. But then at the same time, when you have a friendly, welcoming community and you start meeting these people and you start seeing their sincerity and the depth of their seeking, it just engages them. It just draws the whole entire community into their journey with them. And many, many, many of our people are being asked now to become sponsors. And we have to take kind of an active part in matching them and mixing them and trying to make sure that sometimes our newest converts are our most friendly people because they just experienced this change themselves. But you can't have the brand new converts be sponsors to the new people every year, right? You gotta mix them and match them with people of experience.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Father. This has been fantastic, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me.
Hey, my pleasure, Matthew, and God bless what you're doing and all the studies and how it's helping us, because I think that doing these kinds of in-depth quantitative studies helps us with the kind of qualitative changes we need to be good, healthy leaders.
Thank you so much, Father.
All right, God bless you and your family.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.